Hello, my sexy and beautiful people of the internet. This is the one and only Chilean retro gamer. And this is a sort of unboxing video. I just made this purchase online. And as you can tell, it's a very shitty, worn out box that looks pretty old as well. But its content is actually very valuable for myself, because there is a lot of nostalgia involved in this. And without further delay, let's show what this is. Look at this. Yeah, it's a Famicom clone, an NES clone. Nothing out of the ordinary. You have seen one of these before, right? And actually, the reason why the box is like this, very worn out, is because this little thing is from 1991, according to the guy who sold me this. Back in the late 80s, the only console we had was the Atari 2600. Probably there was another one, and of course computer systems, plus the arcades. But as in for home consoles is concerned, I believe the Atari 2600 was like the only massive console that people could afford at the time. And unlike the rest of the world, I mean, I am addressing this to Americans mostly, that the NES came out in 85. Well, in Chile, I don't know how it applied in the rest of Latin America, but as in Chile specifically, the NES came out pretty much in early 90s. People who could get it before usually were people that traveled to the United States and got an actual NES, right before it actually came out here, being available in stores. So before that, we had the Atari 2600, and before we actually had the NES, we had these massively, the Famicom clones, NES clones. And the creation used to be one of the more popular ones, if not the most popular. Actually, looks like an NES. It usually had a slot for Famicom cartridges and also a slot here for the NES cartridges. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have the one for Famicom, but it does play NES games. The controllers, as you can see, are kind of similar in terms of size, at least, to the NES ones, and included zapper and all that jazz. But the thing is that this console right here used to have games in the internal memory, plus you could add cartridges to expand your experience with the console. So it was like an actual NES. It wasn't as good as the NES. It was smaller than the NES, and of course the quality itself, I wouldn't say it's questionable, because as you can see, it's something from 91 and in a pretty much perfect condition, as you will see. It doesn't really say that this console was a piece of shit. Actually, a lot of people still sell these, of course used and worn out, but if it works after 20 or 30 years, it's because this isn't that bad after all. Well, the reason why I bought these thing, I want to show you the console real quick. But trust me, the console wasn't the main reason why I bought it. Because I already got a couple of Famicom clones. I got the FC Twin and I got the Super Retro Trio that allow me to play NES games without any problem. So let's take a look at the console. Apparently there was a drop of something very hot that dropped in here. Who knows when this happened? So the guy said that he opened up the console and cleaned it so thoroughly, and I actually proved it after I tested it out. So yeah, we usually have this family computer game or computer video game message. In here you insert the NES cartridges. It doesn't have the same space as the actual NES, but it gets the job done. It has the power and reset buttons and ports for the NES controllers and the zapper as well. Besides, it got audio and video jacks for composite, so It is streamable. Just letting you know. And of course the AV. And I believe this other thing is for headphones. Could be wrong about that, but I believe it is possible to listen to the music through the actual console. So yeah, here's the console. The AC adapter, I didn't put it in the box. It is already connected, plugged in. Here we have the AV cables. Nothing out of the ordinary. It gets the job done. And this is the controller, the original controller for the Creation, which actually, except for the pad, it's not that bad. Actually, the buttons doesn't sound cheap. Actually, it is pretty decent. What's with my fucking... I don't know what this is. It's like a piece of bread or something. Whatever. Yeah, they look pretty solid. And actually, these are compatible for NES, as you can see here. Actually, I recently acquired... I mean, no, I didn't acquire it yet. I just ordered it. Adapters for NES and Super NES and PlayStations through USB, so I can use these controllers on a computer. And it would be interesting to see this. By the way, the reason why it has 2 extra buttons is for turbo, as it says there. But the thing is, this controller right here is the second player. If you see the box, it shows 2 controllers. One of them has the select and start buttons, but the other one doesn't have it. Well, I got a controller that doesn't have select and start. So what happened to the other controller then? How are you going to start your games? Well, that's one of the reasons why I actually bought this console. Not for the console itself, not for the AV cables, not for the actual controller, even though it looks pretty decent. I would use it for PC gaming maybe, or for emulators. But the reason why I bought it is because the first player's controller, as opposed to this one right here that shows up, well, it wasn't longer available. So the guy who sold me that decided to put an actual NES controller as player one's controller. I didn't have an NES controller. I do have the Famiclones. One of them, actually the FC Twin, is similar to a Super Nintendo controller, and the Super Retro Trios controller is also similar to the Super Nintendo. But I didn't have one of these. So it was a good opportunity to actually have a real NES controller and play a game with this after like 15 years or so. Now, do you think this is the main reason why I bought this console and everything else? No, it isn't the main reason. Well, all of this came with this little baby right here. Super Games 150 in 1. Hey, Chillin' Retro Gamer, please don't get fooled. These are repeats. Well, I told you, in the internal memory to this thing, there are around 20 games. And then it says in the box, with 190 games. But in reality, we all know that inside this little memory, we have no more than 20 games. Super Mario, Galaga, Pac-Man, and a couple of others. Circus Charlie, that used to be very repetitive and common in the multi-game cartridges or multi-carts. But this one right here actually was released in 2015. And it has pretty much all the most popular and most expensive NES games ever. It has all the Mega Man games, all Double Dragons, all Adventure Island. It has the Flintstones 1 and 2. Remember how expensive they are. It has all the Ninja Gaidens, Castlevania 1 and 2. You know, it got like the biggest hits for the NES. 150 different games, no repeats. I tested it out. It's actually a good purchase. I could have bought this alone, but hey, this little piece of equipment right here got a nostalgia factor in me, because I used to see a lot of these when I was a kid, and I actually borrowed one from a friend at some point. So it's definitely worth it. This and the actual NES controller, so I can actually play NES games on a TV without emulation. Not from the real hardware, I still need to buy an actual NES. But hey, I got something official. And a very valuable piece of cartridge here with the most expensive and most popular and the best NES games ever. It's definitely worth the purchase. And of course, using this console right here, I can still use my official NES cartridges. I tested them out, they work just fine. So it's basically like I bought another NES. I already had a couple of Famiclones, but I didn't have as many games as now. And also I got me this. Now, I still need to get a Zapper. And those were not very expensive the last time I saw it in a flea market, like a month ago. So I'll get one so I can play some Duck Hunt, some Wild Gunman, and other games. So yeah, so super disorganized now, but whatever. I'll tidy it up. So yeah, that was my little unboxing of sorts, getting this Famiclone from the 90s, super classic in Chile. I don't know how classic and popular was where you lived, but I got me all of this for like $45. Again, it might not be worth the purchase because it's a Famiclone, but it got an official piece of equipment and also 150 NES games, and most of them are super expensive nowadays individually, so definitely worth buying it. So yeah, of course, this will be added officially to my backlog, and I'll be playing from this very often on camera, so get ready. Thank you for watching, everybody. See you in the next one.